Welcome, everybody. This is a fantastic turnout, and for some reason, I'm not surprised considering Daryl is our speaker tonight. But it is my pleasure. I'm Sarah Hansen, the Executive Director of the White Bear Lake Area Historical Society. And along with me is Dan Jones, our Creative Director, the one who's, again, been putting out chairs and setting up cameras and all sorts of things. But it is our pleasure to introduce Darryl LeMire, who is here with me, and I think many of you know. Um, for this presentation tonight, Reflections on the Vietnam War. Daryl has spoken for us several times, actually, now over the years. I was thinking back this afternoon about what I was going to say to introduce him, and I had to chuckle a little bit because I think we've known each other for a good 20 years when I've been roping you into these sort of things.
Yes, you have. Yes.
So thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. I enjoy these. Yes.
So I'd also like to thank our members for the White Bear Lake Area Historical Society. If you're not a member, we can certainly help you with that. But if you are, thank you so much, because without the support of our members in our community, we wouldn't be able to do things like this. And then I want to add one final plug before I jump into Daryl himself, because I have to slide away toward the end of the program this evening, and I don't want to forget. But we are very excited to announce that we are hosting The Wall That Heals, the 3/4 scale replica of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. That'll be happening at Polar Lakes Park on August 6th through the 9th, and you'll be hearing all kinds of things about it. But it is a fabulous opportunity to get out and honor our veterans, in particular those who we've lost through the Vietnam War, but veterans in general as well. So lots more to come on that, but I don't want to miss that opportunity tonight. So, all right, this is just a few of the, we were laughing as we tried to put together a slide of some of the things Daryl's been involved with over his lifetime. And Dan kept putting more logos in there, and I said, I'm not talking about all that. They want to hear about Daryl. Sorry, they want to hear from Daryl. So I won't go into tremendous detail, but I think that it's worth noting that in addition to his time in Vietnam and his service in the military, Daryl is many, many things. He was served on the White Bear Lake City Council for a number of years. He has been active at Benson Airport pretty much since his birth.
Yes.
Flight instructor and several other elements up there, and has been involved in aviation, been a sheet metal worker, and all sorts of other things over the years, which has led him to be who he is today. And without any further ado, it is my honor to introduce Darryl LeMire, who is going to present tonight.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Wow. I'd like to start out tonight with just first introducing my family who's here with me. My wife, Sandy, that we've been married now coming up on 59 years, which is amazing this year. My 3 children, my son, Pat, my son, Danny, and my daughter, Lee, their families, my grandchildren. I've got a bunch of grandchildren here too. I'm not going to introduce all of them because we want to get going with the program, but thank you so much for coming this evening. I am getting older and somewhat more emotional about some of these things. Okay? So let's get going with this. I tried to get in the Marine Corps right out of high school and flunked the physical in 1966, 1967, and then I met my lovely bride in 66, and we decided in late 67 to get married, and we married on Veterans Day, November 11th of 1967, and the Army had just given me a physical, and I got a draft notice just a little over a month later. I'm going to introduce myself as what I was in the Army. Dan, you need to talk a little louder, a little closer? Okay. There we are. Darryl LeMire, US 56504-271, my service number. I was drafted, sent to Fort Campbell, Kentucky on January 29th, 1968, 2 days before the Tet Offensive, and went through the most miserable winter that they had in Kentucky for over 50 years. It was a real struggle through that time. And Sandy had a miscarriage right at the end of my basic training, and I was shipped to Fort Rucker. There was no leaving basic at that time without having to go through it again, which I wasn't going to. And amazingly, I stayed as a draftee, but I was very smart about testing in my life, which surprised, I'm sure, a lot of people. But they sent me to Fort Rucker when almost every person I knew was going to Fort Polk, Louisiana to be the infantry soldier. And so I was fortunate to be in a training for helicopter repairmen, they called us, single rotor turbine helicopter repairmen. You can't? Okay, I'll try and talk. Is that a little better if I get it right there? Okay. All right, let's kind of back up just 1 second here. I'm just talking about my time getting drafted into the Army. I'd like to know how many of us in the room are Vietnam vets. If you could just raise your hand. Huh? Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. At the end of the program, I may call on you guys again, depending on the time and how you feel about it, okay? One more person I want to introduce here before we get really rolling. If Dick would just stand up for a moment. When I first got to Vietnam, I went over with a battalion movement into there, and then just 6 weeks later, they rotated most of us out to other parts of the country. And it was my first or second night there. I went on bunker guard, and somebody asked where I was from, and I said Minnesota. And what did you tell them, Dick?
Matamidi.
There he was, from Matamidi. So we
stayed up the rest of the night talking.
Yeah, we spent most of our time together in Vietnam. It was a time of life that I wasn't really happy to be there. Sandy was quite pregnant when I left, and that didn't make the issues much easier. And it was kind of a strange time, okay? But Dick has been my friend ever since. We get together regularly, even though he's way over there in Matamidi, okay? And I got to Vietnam. We came out of Fort Carson, Colorado, and we flew out of there. And I went to a place called Camp Evans, if any of you were there, the Marine base at one time, up north of, just south of the DMZ. I had a kind of an unusual entry into the country. We landed in Da Nang at midnight. There was a helicopter, Chinook helicopter, waiting for us, and they piled us in, and I flew up to Camp Evans in the dark. My first sunrise in Vietnam was about 10 miles or 15 miles south of the DMZ. And it was kind of a real shock when I got there. Camp Evans had been heavily destroyed during the Tet Offensive of '68. I got there in the first week of February of '69. And there was shrapnel everywhere, craters everywhere, and it was really a brutal place to be. But they couldn't leave us all in one place because we rotated out in a year and they didn't want the whole battalion going home at once. Did I lean on that? Okay. Goof. Let me go back to this. Sarah, which way am I going here?
Press the other way. There you go.
Okay. They put this one in here. So I'm going to have to jump a little bit here. One of the things I did recently, 10 years ago, so that's recent, we put a Huey helicopter together. If you get a chance, look up 1968 exhibit sometime. It's a 9-minute presentation, and that was one of the greatest groups I've ever worked with. But I want to get back to the Vietnam story and talk about Vietnam a little bit. That's a map of the country. Dan put that in there. I was by the city of Hue. I came down 6 weeks out of Camp Evans that we were bringing our helicopters in. So I never really got much chance to work on a helicopter there. They did me at my other skills, like filling sandbags, mixing cement, all the fun things you do, digging holes. But then I got down to Phu Bai. And our base motto was Phu Bai is all right. If I think of it later, I'll tell you why they said that. And my military occupation status, MOS, was 67N20. I met a gentleman, Tom, where are you? Somewhere. There you are, another 67N. Any other 67N20s in the room? Okay, two of us. Okay. That was kind of a double do. We had different things we did. We were single rotor turbine helicopter repairmen. And if you see a Huey flying, the left seat rear gunner was a 67N20 crew chief. So we did maintenance and crew chief duties. Those were both assignments of our MOS. I happened to be really good at maintenance, and they kept me there, and I stayed there in maintenance the whole time I was there. So I got down to Fubai, and I got to tell you this because it's part of my story. Is that first day I was there, I went out to the flight line. They sent me out. I didn't know anybody. A couple guys came down with me that I knew, but I wasn't with them right then. And they just said, go to work. I have never been more overwhelmed in my life. We had 20 aircraft in company, aircraft flying everywhere, and I didn't know what the heck to do. I told them that. I can't even, what do I do? And I felt, by the end of the day, I did try to do a few things, and I just went back feeling really insignificant. I just felt overwhelmed. And I really thought about it that evening, and this kind of set up the whole thing for my time with the Black Widows. I thought about it, and I thought, I'm not doing this for the Army. I'm doing it for a whole bunch of guys. Do we have any infantry soldiers in here? Yeah. Okay, there's Dave. Oh, you know what, Dave? I'm going to introduce you right now. My friend Dave Adams is a past state commander of the Veterans of Foreign Wars. We've known each other since we were 15 or 16 years old, Dave. Staff Sergeant Dave Adams. Sergeants were a pain in the rear, okay? But I thought about it that night, and I thought, I'm not doing this for the Army. I'm not doing this for anything other. We lived right in the foothills of the jungle that rolled out into the Ashaw Valley in Laos. And I thought, I'm doing this for those guys out there. And I got up that next morning and went out and started working. And I realized I was pretty good at it. And I kept getting better, and we worked. And I eventually became a crew leader as a maintenance guy. But that's really how I felt strongly about that. Is everything I did was for that infantry soldier out there. I was hoping my friend Rock Whitcup would be here tonight. I didn't know it at the time. Rock has been my friend. I grew up around him, and we've been friends for many, many years. He was one of those infantry soldiers in the 101st Airborne Division that used those helicopters all the time. Let's see what we got for the next picture here. There it is. The city of Way was right there. The old imperial capital. For those Marines that were here, if you were there in '68, that was the Battle of Way City that went on there. It was overrun by the North, and they had some really, really heavy fighting in that area. And when I got there, it was pretty darn secure. 101st Airborne had things. It wasn't as. I joked with Harry Mayers one time and told him it was safer there than it was here, and he didn't think it was funny. But no fast cars and not much beer. So that's where I was. It was only about, 30 miles wide right there. That was about it. And then it was Laos. And then it was about another 30 or 40 up to DMZ from there. That was our area of operation for the 101st Airborne Division. They called it the I Corps. That was the highest. The I Corps had the highest level of killed in Vietnam during the Vietnam War. They had 4 corps. I Corps, 2 Corps, 3 Corps, and 4 Corps. 4 Corps was all the way down to the south. I spent my entire time at Fubai. Never left. Couldn't afford I never got out on R&R or nothing. You lived right there in the company. I'm only one of 2.5 million stories. I'm not going to try to pretend that I know everything about Vietnam. I know about what I did, what my company did, and what our division did that we saw. I want to just read you something here quickly. I'm not much of a reader for this, but I brought this home with me. Taken from the September of 1969 101st Airborne, or 101st Aviation Battalion that I was in, newsletter. We were the Black Widows, and it said, I'll read it kind of word for word. The webheads of Charlie Company are very proud of themselves, as well they might be. For the month of August, that's just a 130-day period, or 31, I guess, we had 18 aircraft available for missions. We flew a total of 2,132 hours. We flew 6,111 sorties. That's a takeoff and landing. We moved 8,687 packs. That's infantry soldiers. We moved 181 tons of cargo, plus command and control. And then they go into what the maintenance did. We were listed as a 5/16th TC detachment with the Black Widows. We put out 27 periodic inspections, which were 100-hour inspections, 3 of which were hot end, or 1,100-hour, 5 hot ends, 5 engine changes, 3 main transmissions and masts, 4 main rotor heads, 2 scissors, swash plate, 90-degree gearbox, 2 tail booms, and 2 rotor heads. Only 1 tail boom was changed by our support maintenance, and there was only about 35 of us in maintenance. Our lives were up in the morning at 5, into formation, out to work on the flight line, take a lunch break, back on the flight line, take a dinner break, back to the flight line, unless you had guard duty, like where Dick and I met. And we pulled guard about every 3rd night, and they'd let us off till noon. And Sunday was a day of rest. We didn't get up till 6. And if there was nothing real pressing after dinner, you didn't have to work, unless you had guard duty or some other fine detail. It was a very, very stressful environment. This is, Dick, if you recognize it, this is the Black Widows. This is where we lived. Dick and I lived. This little T-shaped building down in front was our mess hall. I lived just to the right of it. If you go all the way back up to where there was a kind of tent, Dick was always been much smarter than me. He actually built his own hooch, little 8x8 fish house, and he got to live by himself. And he took care of the arms room. Anything that blew up, aerial flare, Dick took care of it. Of course, he did not take care of the machine guns for the aircraft. Those belonged to the door gunner, and they were theirs to maintain. That last row of these revetment walls you see down here, the last row up on the right, that's where we pulled all maintenance. I never worked in a building the whole year I was there. We worked outside in all weather conditions. And this was technically called the Fubai sub base. That little bit of an area just beyond us was our gun company. They had 12 Cobras in there. And the bigger pad behind it was A Company, 159th Battalion, the Chinook Company. They were the pachyderms. And that was us. We were their main target for rockets and other things. And we lived, the perimeter was from where I lived to not quite the wall. We lived right on the perimeter. It was maybe 100 yards at the most. It wasn't even that far. And we were our own security. We'd right there. I'm gonna show you. This is 6 of our 20 aircraft coming back from a mission. I just took a picture of one day. They were coming back in from somewhere, I don't know where. They left every morning. They came back every afternoon, but there was night missions also that went out for flare missions and other things at night. Anybody that was in trouble, they went to get them. This is our mess hall, and that building right up on the top right there, that's where I lived. We had 16 guys lived in that little place, 64 feet long, 16 feet wide. I had 2 sheets of plywood I lived on. My little 8x8 square, and 2 feet of the middle was boulevard where everybody traveled. And I stayed right there the whole time I was at Fubai. Now, we're going to get into monsoon. Every once in a while you think you're kind of smart, but I'm not going to get to monsoon yet, but you can't really see it. We had tarps that would come down over the windows, so when it rained. But of course, it got really hot. So if you can see it, you can't really see it. There was sandbags up on the roof, just a few of them. I thought, well, if I put the tarp up there, put a couple sandbags on it, if it rains, it'll fill up and come out. First night it rained, tarp pulled out from other bags, came down. I thought, ha ha, boy, am I smart. Okay. Put it back up. Next time it rained, I put them a little further under the bag, filled up with rain, then it pulled the nails out on the inside and came in bed with me. So I proved again I wasn't the brightest bulb there. Okay. But this was our mess hall. This end, they were sticking out this way, that was enlisted men. The way it went the other direction was officers, and then this was the cooking area in the back here. And as you can see, it's just, they had this wonderful stuff we called Peter Prime that was just like a pitch, a black pitch, oily stuff that put on the ground to keep the dust from flying. The helicopters often, that's a gun mount. Mine must have been in a helicopter right then. The way we did it when we got done with maintenance, the maintenance crew made the first flight on a maintenance operational check. So the whole crew got in the aircraft and off we went to make sure. And if it crashed and burned, you got rid of the crew that didn't do the job. Okay, so that was just the way they did it.
Can I pour you on something?
Okay.
Notice there's no greenery. That's because they sprayed everything with Agent Orange.
That's right, Dick. I didn't have a picture of it in here. Once a month, C-123s laid down a little blanket of sticky, gooey stuff over us. Yeah, it was, yeah. That is our enlisted men's club, affectionately called Mosquito Tavern. All right. Now, I was lucky because I had a friend who built his own hooch sitting here. And we used to go up to Dick's Hooch. The group, there was about 4 or 5 of us, and we'd maybe have a beer or occasionally a little bit of the noble weed. And we'd play. We had this goofy little board game that we played, and we'd laugh and we'd have fun. And Dick provided us with a total escape from that company. We could not get away from each other. If there was a hard thing in your life, live with 200 people. You eat together, sleep together, shower together, use the bathroom together, and you never get out of each other's sight. I guarantee you there's conflict there. And it was very hard. There was a young guy with us that was a Church of the Latter-day Saint. Didn't smoke, didn't drink, didn't chew snuff, didn't do nothing. And even he flipped out one day and used the F word on somebody. So it was a very stressful environment to live on top of each other. And everything we did, somebody's life depended on it. That infantry soldier that was out there, whatever they were doing, counted on us. They needed us, and I knew that from the very first day I got there. That was what we existed for. This is one company. Each battalion, we had 3 slick companies of 20 aircraft, a gun company of 12 Cobras, and a headquarters company. 101st Battalion, 158th Battalion were identical. The Chinook Company was very much the same, and then the 101st had something called the 2nd to 17th Cav also. That we were the wings of the eagle in the 101st group, and that's the way we functioned. But that's part of the company area. And our toilets, our outhouses. If you really want to, the movie Platoon, when they were pulling those cans out, that was probably one of the most real scenes in the movie that I saw. Each one had one in the background, they only had one hole. Must have been for the officers. We weren't allowed in there. There were 4 holers, and one was boarded up. Ken, do you have any idea why they boarded one up? I never found out. 3. So you'd go in there and do your business, and it went into a cut-off 55-gallon drum underneath. And then some poor soul, of which I was often one of them, would get detail that day to burn it. And all over the base in the morning, black smoke would be coming up out of the burn areas. I got a day that nobody had been out of company for like 3 days in the rain, and I got picked that morning. You can't believe. That's like, I know what bad is. That was bad. Okay, that was bad. But that, I took a picture of it because I had to have that as a memory. There I am. That's very late in my tour. I was skinny. Dick, you were even skinnier. He was a little bit more fussy about what he ate than me. And that's our flight ops. Sarah and I have laughed. She said, I can't find a picture of you with clothes on all the way. That's the way we worked. I worked outside, I lived outside, and I was in. We always took our shirt, for formation, we put our shirts on, that was it. And we pulled police call a couple times a day too. That was one of their fun things to do for us. Here's one of our helicopters. You'll see the sign says, Beats Walking, your ride compliments of Black Widows. C Company, 101st Aviation Battalion, 101st Airborne Division, Phu-Bai, Vietnam. Every one of our aircraft had that, so that everybody that we hauled knew who was hauling them, the Black Widows. This ship here had a hard landing. Crew chief's name was Ron DeFranco. The left side of the aircraft here, that was crew chief well, where they sat. And they flew that back to the company with the gear folded up around it, and they just flew it in and landed it on sandbags so that we could work on it. We did everything to those things. Very, very little stuff ever went out to our support maintenance. We did pretty much everything. That's a guy we called it the secondary hellhole. He was working on something in the tail boom. I just had to take a picture of it, I guess, because it looked kind of funny, you know. But that was our life inside that thing. 7 days a week, we lived in those things, out in the sunshine, in the rain, whatever it was at night. We worked a lot of nights too. There's a revetment wall. This is the foothills that led out to the Ashaw and the mountain ranges in the jungles of Southeast Asia up in the I Corps, where the 101st operated. The Ashaw Valley, for those that don't know, was one of the main infiltration routes out of the north into the South Vietnam. And that summer of 1969, the 101st Airborne decided to take it back. And it was a brutal summer on the infantry and a brutal summer on the flight crews that went there every day. And the jungle was right there. There's just one of our helicopters coming in. This is right out the back door of my hooch. And there was a graveyard right there, Vietnamese graveyard. We used to go sit out there. It was the only place there was grass. Remember that, Dick?
Yeah.
We'd go sit on the steps. We had grass to sit on. So that's a main transmission out of a Huey we had taken out. That's me with the rotor head behind us with the blade. You see it there? And see that mountain in the background? Right on the other side of that mountain is the 101st Airborne Division Base Camp, called Camp Eagle. And that building there is part of D Company, across the street from us. This is right on the borderline between us and D. And inside that mountain, the perimeter was 150 yards to my front, where it is. Inside that mountain, in the summer of 1969, they found a fully stocked North Vietnamese and NVA hospital, all supplied, waiting for them to come back. And it was right inside our perimeter of the 101st Airborne Division. They blew it up, but it was kind of like, it was almost spooky when they did that. This is when I first got there. That's a bunker on the line up at Camp Evans. That was kind of a scary place. Evans was a main battle base for ahead of the time I got there. And the Ghost Riders that I was with, that I went over with, were based there along with the 3rd Brigade of the 101st Airborne Division. They'd take us out there. It was out towards the mountains, the foothills there. And they told us, they said, be careful out there. A lot of guys had their throats cut. It's been a dangerous place. We get out there, and there's these bunkers. And right between two of the bunkers is a gate like you got on the end of your driveway up at the cabin that they pull closed at night and they put a chain around it. And we're looking at that going, you got to be kidding me. I mean, it came right down the road. I was out there one night thinking about, this is really spooky. And here comes about 5 grunts walking down the road from behind us. And they said, we'll be right out there tonight. If you hear anybody come running, leave us, don't shoot at us. And I'm thinking, I guess it's not so bad where I am. But that was Evans. Bunker guard, I pulled bunker guard probably every 3rd night I was in Vietnam. And they did give us off till noon when we got in the morning. And some nights you got to sleep out there, some nights you didn't. So many nights we were up all night and then you just get a couple hours sleep in the morning and then go back to work. That's down at Phu Bai. I was just telling Dick, one morning they just said, go out there. I said, go out there for what? Just go out there, we'll see what's out there. So what am I looking for? Just go look. So this is about a mile out from where we were. There was kind of there was a river that ran by us that went out way out, then turned around, came back inside the perimeter right by us. And we just went out there. I was just telling Dick, and I know this gentleman heard me. While I was out there walking on one of these paths, I encountered this snake that was like this big around and 5-6 feet long, black. It must have been a cobra. And he looked at me and I looked at him, and I went that way and he went that way, which was just fine. I don't know. I guess we were sent out there to see if we could draw any fire. The only thing I could figure out. That's my M16, Colt M16A1, serial number 1144750. And she was black and beautiful. Okay. There's another picture coming in from the side. You can see the little bit of a stream next to us right here. That's our flight line. You can see part of it's washed away. Our buildings, like Dick said, it's dirt. Everything was dirt. That behind us, I never really was over there. I don't know what that really was. We didn't get to play tourists very much. We barely got to socialize with each other. It was so busy. Now, that bunker right there was one of our bunkers that we pulled, and that stream you just saw runs just on the far side of it. Started raining in October. From what they told us, it rained 5 feet in 3 days in the monsoon. The guys on bunker guard that night had to be rescued by a boat. Now, my friend sitting here doesn't like snakes, all right? Right? Not your buddies.
A dead one.
Dead ones, yeah. There was a lot of poisonous snakes there. They had these little ones, and Dick and I go to bar. We went to guard mount where they'd tell us what was going on, and then we'd come back to the bunker line. And they said, be careful tonight because the snakes are all up on the bunkers. And all night long he kept saying, I wish they wouldn't have told me. And also bugs. Bugs. You can't even believe how big bugs were over there. They had these water bugs, 5-6 inches long. One night in the monsoon, I thought I was pretty smart. I had a little poncho laying on and I actually brought an air mattress with me. I was laying on my air mattress. I was not that bunker, but probably the one the picture was taken from right here. And my friend Jerry Koch was behind me, and I was laying there trying to stay warm. It was drizzly out. And I had my hands laying on my chest, and I moved my hand, and this bug that felt like he had legs the size of my little fingers was laying on me. Me, the bug, my M16, and the mattress went flying in the air, and he got away, luckily. And then, so that was kind of funny that I had that happen. And then centipedes. They ain't that long, guys. They're that long. And they're poisonous, and they're aggressive. Can you ever see any of them? Dave, do you ever see any of them? Yeah, nasties. Yeah, we chased up a few of them through time, too. They seem to hide in sandbags for some reason. I don't know. So this is where we were. Our lives were centered around the infantry. If you look on that came in, we were a target that they liked. When I got at Phu Bai in March, that one came in on us one night with about, I'd say, a dozen to 15 of them, one right after the other. And it says CCCP right on the side. That was the Russian Union of Soviet Socialist Republic. 122 millimeter, that's a little bit bigger than 4-inch diameter, with an artillery round on them. And they shot them damn things at us, never longer than 1 week, but never more than 2 days in a row. But we were just kind of a target. I didn't know it at the time, but what they told us is where our company area was. The Tet Offensive in 1968 came right through our company area, through that little valley that was right there. And again in 1975 when they came in. But those were not fun. I'm sure most of you have seen rockets. There's a hunk of shrapnel. I'm not sure exactly what it was off of. I got it at home. I didn't bring it down. That would come through the air at about 1,000 miles an hour, white hot. And if you got hit by it, they ate you. When I got to Camp Evans, that stuff was everywhere. I said, what the hell happened up here? Fubai wasn't so bad because it had been bulldozed before I got there, so we didn't see much of it. Robert, you probably were working on it. That's looking west on our flight line. I thought it was a pretty sunset. Now I'm gonna get a little more choked up. Came time to come home. I had some mixed feelings. I couldn't wait to get out of there. I can't tell you, Sandy, my son who's sitting here, was born 2.5 months after I got there. Time was coming to come home. But yet I was leaving friends that I made that I'm never going to see again. Now, nothing would have kept me there, I guarantee you, but it was still kind of a strange feeling to leave your buddies, your friends that you were with all this time and had gone through so many things with. Now, Dick, again smarter than me, left 5 days ahead of me. When Dick got home, it was 31 below zero, as I recall. I came home and it had warmed up to 29 below zero. I came home 5 days behind him. I told him, I'll probably call you in a couple of weeks, and I think I called you the next day. And he said, I thought you weren't going to call me for 2 weeks. I had to make contact. I had to let him know I was here. He was such a great friend and a way we escaped together from what we lived in. This young lady worked for us. Her name was Shung Nugent Tu. 18 years old. And when Richard Nixon made the decision to leave Vietnam, we told her one day we were leaving, and she said, "You're going home?" And we said, "No, we're all going home." I've never seen terror on a person's face more than I saw on her face that day. She was utterly terrified. I got an email 2 days ago from a Ghost Rider. I wasn't with him in Vietnam, but we've met here. He was one of our pilots, and he said that he remembered that the South Vietnamese, where we were safe. They were protected. The 101st Airborne Division, they lived in the coastal plain and they were safe in their environment. He said what they were terrified of was the NVA, the North Vietnamese Regular Army. When I was there in 1969, they were digging up mass graves from the Tet Offensive of 1968. Our division commander, a guy named General Wright, I didn't know much about him, but the 101st Airborne Division had an explicit, you do not go into villages and take advantage of Vietnamese, period, or you go to jail. I did find out years later that General Wright was a survivor of the Bataan Death March. We protected the people of South Vietnam, and they did have good lives while we were there. She was a friend. I made 2 decisions before I went there that I've never regretted, and I don't tell a lot of people about this. I wouldn't kill anyone if I didn't have to. My job allowed I didn't have to. I would have had it been necessary, because that was what we were there for, right, Dave? We were. But my real decision that I decided I've never regretted, not for a second. No women, period. I did not leave a child there. I guarantee you. It wasn't easy. It's not an easy decision for a 22-year-old man. I've never regretted that, ever. She wanted to come to America. I hope she made it. I'll never know. I was going to send a picture back of my family when I got here to my good buddies to give to her, and I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. I didn't want her to see what I came back to. I came back to the world. I came back to life that was here. We were good soldiers. I'm not naive enough to think some people didn't take advantage, but I guarantee you the leadership of our divisions didn't tolerate it at all. If an American unauthorized killed someone, they went to jail. If you were out in the villages taking advantage and the MPs got you, they took you in. And we protected them, and they knew it. They knew it. I really hope she made it. By the way, I was 22. All my buddies, what'd they call me, Dick?
Pops.
I was Pops. Because I was so old, I had a wife and a kid. I was an old man when I was a somewhat young man, but most of the guys were 20, 19, 20 years old. Yeah. So, all right, this thing here is called a Chuhoi leaflet. You ever see these guys? They'd rain these things out of the sky by the thousands, inviting the North Vietnamese to join the South. And if they came over, they became, with the 101st Airborne at least, Kit Carson Scouts. And they'd go out and work with the 101st Airborne Division in North Vietnam and Laos and all over South Vietnam where we were. This is another thing that happened to these men who came over. They hated them in the North. When we left all the records behind in 1975, and they knew every single person that came over to our side. Very unfortunate. I got to play tourist one day. Out of clear blue in monsoon season, they said, "How'd you like to go on a tour?" I said, okay. We jumped on one of those buses that looked like Forrest Gump was on, and off we went. This is a picture of the outside of the Citadel wall around the imperial capital of the city of Hue. Very interesting that day. This is a picture of it from the air. Dan put this in. Notice that the North Vietnamese flag was not there at that time. Okay. This is the interior. This is where the emperor greeted people. There's some of the Vietnamese people on the street. Dan pointed out somebody's pointing at me from inside. They're taking a picture. Their transportation system wasn't too different. I got a 3-wheel bike now, only it's kind of the other way around. Sandy rides on the back. I learned that from him. Motorcycles, motor scooters. I met a woman a few years ago. My daughter laughs about her. Auntie Han, we met her. And they asked me if I went on R&R, and I said no. She said, well, you could have gone to Vung Tau. I said, yeah, I know, but I wasn't putting myself in that kind of temptation, so I didn't go. And she pipes up and says, oh, did I like Vung Tau? She was 15. They bought her a scooter, and she was supposed to ride a mile to school. At the end of the week, she had like 150 miles on her scooter. And they said, where were you? She was at Vung Tau, meeting with all the GIs. She was 15, and my daughter Lee said, I guess teenagers are teenagers everywhere. So I think they took their scooter away. They were very entrepreneurial. They had businesses everywhere. They bought things, sold things. I just took some pictures of that. There's where some of them live. That's the Perfume River in the city of Way. How'd you like to live on something like that?
The name was deceiving.
The name?
The name.
The Perfume River, yeah, it was perfume. Now this is a picture of, it's actually two buildings. I went to a pagoda. They took us to a pagoda. There's 7 levels of Buddha. You see the top 4, the bottom 3 are hidden behind this building in the front. And the Buddhist monks were there. Something I didn't realize while I was there, remember the man who burned himself to death in 1963? This was one of his pagodas. And the car he rode down there in was in that pagoda. And I got to visit it. It's up on the Perfume River. Now this here, something I never once told Sandy about. It was someone who was killed, and this was the front of a little brochure and company. We'd have a memorial service. And some of my friends, the guys I went to Vietnam with, and the Ghost Riders, they seemed to took more of a beating than we did in the Black Widows, and I don't know why. Luck has a lot to do with it, but skills also. I don't remember who this one was, but that's what we do. I got to the Black Widows, I think 2 days or 3 days after I was there, Dick, we had lost a flight crew. And I'm not sure, this is something I've never known for certain. They were flying low and slow through the Ashaw and took a rocket-propelled grenade, which is an anti-tank rocket, into the crew chief's well and blew the helicopter up. Both pilots were burned to death, and the crew chief was burned to death. And the door gunner flew out of the aircraft and was not found for hours. They searched for him. And not too long before I left, the mail clerk told me that he saw my letter addressed to White Bear Lake, and he said the door gunner that survived was from White Bear Lake, Minnesota. And I don't know, I've never met him. I don't know who he gave me a name named Anderson. How do you find an Anderson? You know? But that's what I think. I'm not sure. May have been not true, but that guy had no reason to lie to me. Code of conduct. I'm going to get into now our lost. Oh man, I got to get going here. Our lost. The first article of Code of Conduct is, I am an American fighting man. I serve in the forces which guard my country and our way of life, and I am prepared to give my life in their defense. First day I read that in basic training, I said, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. Got to Vietnam, and I saw what it meant. The men who died that I was with and around us, they did not get up that morning and say, I'm going to give my life today. You were prepared by doing your duty, by doing what you were told to do, getting in the aircraft, grabbing your rifle and heading out behind your staff sergeant, Dave Adams, into the jungle. And sometimes you lived that, willingly gave your life. We lost, I believe, 8 from White Bear Lake. I had one of the most emotional days of my life when I was commander at White Bear VFW in 89-90. We got 5 families that came down with us. Jerry Levasseur with his son Jerry, Mr. and Mrs. Uttermark with their son Jim, Mr. and Mrs. Ellis for their son Jerry, Mrs. Smith with her son Gerald, Mrs. Rhodes, John Riley's mother, and she was a character that Sandy and I got to be very good friends with. She was really, but it was when they left that day, we spent the day with them with the mayor, and their engraved names were engraved in Veterans Hall. It was one of the most emotional days I ever had. They said, thank you for caring about our loss. Yes, we care about their loss. We still do. I gotta hurry up a little bit here. Reflections. The guy on the far side there, that's him right here. Okay. Particularly, yeah, you were kind of cute then. Still are. My point is going to be that we were successful people. Dick has had a small business, successful. What he's unsuccessful at, he can't retire.
I got the wrong page. It should be blacked out.
Yeah. The guy in the middle, Bob Ventrella, went on to be a chief pilot at SkyWest Airlines. My friend Jerry Koch, who I've taken more showers with than Sandy. He went on to be a Chicago fireman. Jerry is up here. I got a picture. I didn't put it in here. There's 5 of us Black Widows a year ago at the White Bear VFW. Jerry Koch, Dick, Jim Elkins from South Dakota, Kevin Ryan from White Bear Township, and me and Sandy. I enjoy these friendships. I cherish them. My friend Lonnie Heidke from Chippewa Falls. Lonnie was shot on April 13th, 1969. Hit him in the butt, went all the way through, stayed out, his rib cage popped out his neck. And he said the worst part was when he was in the hospital, they cut you all the way to the full length of your wound. So they opened him up at full length of his body. He was back in combat within 3 weeks. Stitched him up and sent him back. And he still smiles just like that. I saw him just recently. This is a crew chief. That's his well. There's the infantry next to him. Bob Alanez, I meet with him monthly. A little more serious man, bigger and tall, Hispanic by descent, lives in the Los Angeles area just south of it. These guys that he's wearing his full combat gear there. Just got out of the aircraft. You can see his M60 on the right side of him, on the far side there. Bob was married, has been married longer than Sandy and I. He'll be 60 years this year. And these guys, I tell them they have great courage. Lonnie always says no. They got up every single morning, climbed into a helicopter, and flew into very, very bad places every day in support of the infantry. And they did it knowing exactly where they were going. That is courage. That is courage. The 10 of us that meet, 5 have Purple Hearts. 1 has a Silver Star, many Bronze Stars in their air medals, Distinguished Flying Crosses, and these are just flight crew members. I'm proud to be able to meet with them monthly, and we laugh and we joke and we talk about Vietnam and we talk about our lives. Every one of them is successful. That's the point I want to make tonight. I left company on the 19th of January, 1970. Jerry and I flew down Cameron, took a shower together. And in the morning we got up and we headed out. They put us on an airplane at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, 3:30 in the afternoon on the 20th of January. And I was in White Bear Lake on the 21st. And that's the first time I got to see my oldest son, who's now going to be 57 years old. I really am Pops now. And Sandy. That was about 10:30 at night on the 21st of January. This is our family today. Excuse me for being emotional. I'm not alone, guys. 85% of us that came home and were successful. Doesn't mean we were rich. We had jobs, we raised families. We did the same thing everybody else did. And as my friend Wes Johansson just told me yesterday, and I've always said this, we did it better because we were Vietnam vets. I tell apprentices all the time, I still teach apprentices. I got an advantage over all of you. I was drafted and sent to Vietnam. I'm a better, stronger man from the experience.